Okay, so I'll be recording this meeting, and there are some, you should be able to mute and unmute yourself. And so when you have questions that come up, please use the raise hand feature, and otherwise keep yourself muted. And you can also type any questions in the chat. I'll go ahead and introduce myself first, and then some other people from my team. My name is Amanda Blackwell. I'm an environmental scientist in the Ocean Standards Unit at the State Water Board. I'm going to guide us through the meeting today. So I also want to introduce my supervisor, Kat Walsh, as well as Michelle Robbins, my coworker, if she's on, and then Rebecca Fitzgerald, our section manager. So would each of you guys like to just say a quick hello?
Yeah, hi, my name is Kat Walsh. I supervise the Ocean Standards Unit and the Division of Water Quality at the State Water Board. And unfortunately, Michelle Robbins isn't with us today. She's out sick with a cold.
And good morning, everybody. I'm Rebecca Fitzgerald. Nice to be together for this. Looking forward to the morning.
Great, thank you guys. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with reviewing the agenda for today. Let me share my screen again so you guys can see this. Okay, so this is our agenda today. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what we'll do is we'll start with introductions and updates. So the way we'll do it is I'll call on each agency and have you guys tell us your name and any updates you have, anything we should know, whatever you want to share. And then I'll get into some informational items of updates for you guys. And then we have a few presentations for today, and then we'll have time for Q&A for those, and then we'll just do a quick wrap up or address any questions or concerns you guys have. And then I also wanted to just go over what the presentations will be for the day real quick. So Rebecca Fitzgerald will be presenting on the California Bacteria Summit and the highlights and updates there. And then John Pang, Stella Shaw, and Vanessa Siraj will talk about bacteria and pathogen source investigation in Newport Bay. And then lastly, Romina Chest will be talking about implementing DDPCR in San Diego. So that's what we have for today. I'll go ahead and stop sharing so that we can start with introductions. So I'll start with East Bay Regional Parks District. Is there anyone on?
Hi, I'm Sabrina Sexton in the East Bay Regional Park District, and in the Water Management Group with Tom McLean, and he's out in the field today. Do you want updates from our region?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So recently, not too terribly much going on in the Park District. We just finished up our swim season at the end of October. Most notably, over the Thanksgiving holiday, we did have a sewage spill into Lake Temescal that elevated some of our bacteria levels. But other than that, water quality at our bay beaches has been really good this year for the most part. We had one sewage spill at Crown Beach in September that was quickly stopped and cleaned up, and we didn't experience any high numbers because of it. And Keller Beach this year did not have any spills. Yeah, so pretty much our update.
Great, thanks, Sabrina. Is there anyone else from East Bay or just you? Okay, great, thanks for sharing. Humboldt County.
Good morning. How's my audio?
Great.
Yeah, thanks. We have a number of beaches which are listed as impaired for fecal coliforms. One of our main goals, my main goal as Director of Environmental Health this year, is to address two things. We've done some microbial source tracking for pathogens. We understand that there's impacts coming from on-site wastewater treatment systems in the West Haven area, which discharge close to a popular surfing beach called Camel Rock and Moonstone Beach. So we are assessing the individual properties and ranking those properties in sort of a red, yellow, and green criteria to see which ones we need to put staff on to assess firsthand the performance of those on-site wastewater treatment systems. But the other big discharge that we're concerned about is Little River, which discharges to Moonstone Beach, which is a very popular surfing beach, and kids bathe in the Little River. And we have frequent closures for exceedances for fecal coliforms. Our microbial source tracking has confirmed that it's ruminants, and we're having real regulatory challenges. We don't have enforcement mechanisms for that sort of waste stream, and so we have tried to communicate with the regional board and motivate the regional board to do some enforcement on our behalf and be a collaborator with us. We're not getting a lot of positive support from the regional board. And I think at this point, it's really going to take organizing our community to really raise the awareness of the regional board as to communicate that this is a priority for us, and it may not be a priority for the regional board, but hopefully we can arrive at some point where we can be effective in addressing the ruminant. Basically, there's cattle in the creek, pooping in the creek, and we need help getting them out. That's our report.
Thank you, Mario. Appreciate the update. All right. And is there anyone from City of Long Beach?
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. Keith Allen here, Water Quality Program Supervisor with Long Beach Environmental Health. All's been pretty quiet over here, except for the only issue we have going on is still doing multiple reporting for Seaton and Beach Watch. I know I've mentioned it in the past at this meeting, and I've been working closely with JARMA, with Water Board, and our vendors to try to automate this so it's less labor intensive for data entry. But I do want to find out from the Water Board folks if any of you are familiar with Seaton. JARMA didn't have an update, but I wanted to find out if you know when Seaton 2.0 might be coming out.
I don't know, but we can look into it and follow up.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm sure JARMA will find out as well. I just wanted to throw it out there to see if anyone else might have info, but that's all we got for Long Beach. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. All right. Los Angeles County. Anyone from LA County? Move on to Marin County. One from Mendocino. Monterey County. Orange County.
Hi, this is Lauren Robinson. I'm the program manager in Orange County. We have a bunch of people on. One of our big updates is we actually have a new supervisor in water quality, and that's Sham El-Mashad. So I'll throw it over to Sham to introduce himself.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's Sham. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, not sure. I think I've met most of you. And for our updates, we don't have very much going on other than year to date. We had about 9 rain advisories, not including the one that's about to come, hopefully this weekend. We have about 194 postings and a total of 3 closures. And other than that, just the frustration of reloading and uploading to Beach Watch a couple times the last few months. But other than that, thank you for the introduction, Lauren.
Great, so great to meet you and hear your updates. Is it just you two from Orange County?
There's a bunch more from
our lab, I believe,
Public Works and the lab, if they want to jump on and say hi.
Yeah, for the North Orange County, we're gonna present today about one of the projects that we've been working on. I don't know if our colleagues at South Orange County want to have anything to share.
I just wanted to introduce myself, Grant Sharp with Orange County Public Works. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. All right. If that's everyone from Orange County, then we can move on to San Diego County.
Hi, everyone. I'm Romina Chef, and I am the environmental health scientist for the Beach and Bay program here in San Diego. And I will be presenting later on the DD-PCR implementation. And that's pretty much all I have to report, other than we do have a new staff scientist that came on board in September, October. Her name is Natalia, and I let her introduce herself.
Natalia, you're muted. Okay, we'll come back to her if she unmutes. Hi, everybody. Heather Bonomo, Director of Environmental Health for San Diego County, here for the presentation today and to say hello. Nice to see everyone.
Hi, thank you. I wonder if Natalia is maybe having some audio issues, but we can circle back. All right, let's move on to San Francisco.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Hear me okay? Okay. Diane O'Donoghue, the lead for the shoreline monitoring program from the SFPUC. It's been pretty quiet, though. We are expecting quite a bit of rain predicted for tomorrow, so we'll see what happens. And while I realize there's not a lot of people on board here, but we've been having to double up on shoreline sampling because we had a sampler that was verbally assaulted and physically threatened. So I'm just wondering if any other agencies have experienced this and what they may have done to not correct it, but to help. Right now, we're having to double up on all of our shoreline sampling and postings and depostings, which is not really cost effective. It's really resource intensive. We are going to do some crisis prevention training in a couple of weeks, but that's as far as we've gotten. But otherwise, no other updates from San Francisco.
Diane, this is Jenny from the city of Santa Cruz.
Yes.
I'm curious, is that monitoring pretty remote that you guys do, or no, it's all in the city?
It's all in the city, but some of the areas are industrial.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the areas are remote right now, like Candlestick Park, because there's barricades up to keep the homeless encampments away.
Right, because I know we have a similar issue in city limits with homelessness, and we've had thefts that have occurred from
Yeah,
our
we do.
vehicles.
Yep, we
Um,
have two. Mhm.
We've been fortunate enough not to have any issues with staffing feeling threatened.
Mhm.
But that's good, not good, but it's important to hear that that is happening up north so that we can be aware as well for safety of our staff. Yeah, we haven't had to double up, but we're not very remote in all our sampling locations. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that. And if anything ever comes up, I'll share it with you on our end too, and we can share resources.
That would be great, Jenny. So actually, in this case, the sampler was me, and I was able to de-escalate it. I don't know how, but so
Oh,
it
good
was
job. Good job.
my heart was going for a while.
Yeah, I know our line staff that go and so I'm at the wastewater treatment facility here. They have been assaulted and threatened before, but they're always doubled up already in the work that they do. Yeah.
Well, our wastewater folks, when they do work, they're able to call our safety officer and he's able to get the police, and the police are on site with them. But shoreline sampling is a different beast. We don't.
You still should be able to call the police.
Yeah, we can if something's happening, but I wasn't even able to grab my phone or anything because I was afraid that he was going to do something to me. So
The lifeguards might be a resource, perhaps an advance notice to them that you'll be out there.
During the busy season, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that's all. Thank you very much, folks.
Yeah, it's a big issue in California. With our great weather, right? We have a lot of people that are unhoused.
Right.
And so then the likelihood of an issue increases with the instability.
Yes, and one last note. I mean, when I finally looked this person in the eyes, he was definitely on drugs because he had no pupils. He was just gone. So thank you all.
Thanks, Diane. Yeah, it's really important to discuss the, ways that we can be safer out there. So maybe we can, find some ways to share that kind of information for being prepared for that kind of stuff. So thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move to San Luis Obispo. All right. Rebecca, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, what you guys was just sharing about, potential assault or just an overall feeling of not being safe when you go out and collect a sample. And, collecting one sample is not worth anybody's safety. If, your samplers or yourself are not, in a position where you can safely get a sample, do not collect the sample, put it in, your sampling report that you weren't able to collect it for that day. I'll stand behind that anytime. It's not worth getting one sample for bacteria. It's not worth anybody's safety out there.
Oh yeah, that's what I tell all of my samplers. It's not worth your safety. If you feel unsafe, leave.
Absolutely.
Leave the area. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca. All right. Let's go to San Mateo County. All right, Santa Barbara.
Not sure if some of my staff are on. Greg Smith. It's been a while since I've joined you guys. I supervise all the water protection and land use programs for San Mateo County Environmental Health. So it includes our beach sampling programs. And we do have also some remote locations as we get south along Highway 1 down toward Santa Cruz County, their northern border. And it's always been a concern of ours with safety also. Because we also use trained volunteers for our sampling efforts, our collection efforts. And again, as has been voiced, we say if it's unsafe, whether it's ocean conditions or just wherever you are, if you feel unsafe, don't turn around, get out. But Anyway, I'm not sure if either Allison Fang or Stella, I don't think Stella's on. I think she's at another meeting or inspection. But yeah, for them, I'll voice the issue of repeated uploads of data and then having to do it one more time. But anyway, all good here. Thanks much.
Thank you, Greg. All right, Santa Barbara. Santa Cruz. Sonoma County. Can I hear someone? Not sure if someone's trying to do an introduction or if you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hi Artie.
Hi, this is Aarti Kundu. I'm from, I'm representing Marin County Environmental Health Services Department. And our actually monitoring only starts from April until October. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then it looks like we're at our last county, Ventura.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Sean Debley. I'm the program manager for Ventura County Environmental Health. In the last 6 months, we've had some loss of our employees. So we lost our technician, our program lead, and our supervisor to promotions. So we are regrouping right now, and hopefully the next meeting we'll have new staff participating. During this time, we're actually, we switched to winter schedule, but we are only sampling our MS4 sites that we are contractually obligated to do for some of our cities here in Ventura County. So we have an abridged program going right now, but hopefully we will be back on track in the next couple months.
Thanks for sharing, Sean. Hope, it looks like you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm with Sacramento County. And
Okay.
yeah, and we work with the other municipalities within the county, the city of Sacramento, Rancho Cordova, Elk Grove, Citrus Heights, Galt. I might be leaving out someone, but we all work together to implement the monitoring portion of the Central Valley MS4 permit and some other combined activities. So we've been participating in the Lower American River Bacteria Study with Alicia Wenzel from Region 5 Regional Board, and also partnering with regional parks and regional SAM for the study. And we, not sure if we've provided updates before, but we finished the monitoring and source tracking samples for the study and have our second round of sampling samples out for analysis right now. So I could give an update maybe at our next meeting about, kind of the overall outcomes of that study.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for being here and for sharing that, Hope. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Another person has their hand raised. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi there, my name is Laura Sato. I'm the microbiology supervisor at the city of San Diego. We have a few people online, a few of our biologists who help do the water quality testing for the city of San Diego and also part of the county. So just wanted to introduce myself.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. All right, I'll move on to the regional board and the state board. Is there anybody that wants to introduce themselves from there?
I will note that there's a hand up.
Okay, I must be missing it. If you have your hand up.
Now it's down.
Oh, and then, yeah, if there's anybody else on from another organization or somebody I missed from, county or city, please feel free to jump in and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Amanda McGee with the State Board. I'm lead the Storms program, the strategy to optimize resource management of stormwater. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks, Maggie. Hey, Luke.
Hi, everybody. My name is Luke Ginger. I'm a staff scientist with Heal the Bay, a nonprofit based in Southern California. I run the Beach Report Card program, and little update for you all. We're going to begin working on our annual report starting in January. So if any of you have any, information you'd like us to include in that report, I encourage you to reach out. I'll be reaching out anyway, but yeah, if you have any updates, source tracking study, I think San Mateo has some updates, like there's some geese stuff happening there. Yeah, send that information along to us. We'd love to have it. And I'll pass it over to Allison, my coworker. Maybe she can give you a quick update on predictive water quality.
All right. Hello, everyone. Allison here. I'm a data specialist at Heal the Bay, working on the Beach Report Card and also our predictive models nowcast. So for the Beach Report Card, we did experience some difficulties during the data issues with WaterBot, but now it's fixed, so we're all good now. And now we're working on our predictive models for the winter seasons, and it should be online during December.
Great, thank you, Allison. Is there anyone else that I missed?
Eric Burris here, State Water Resource Control Board. Just want to make an announcement that December 13th, we will have the meeting for the Safe to Swim work group. So y'all are invited to that. Agenda should be up today. If not, definitely will be up tomorrow. Emails have been sent out to everybody that subscribes to the listserv. So thank you for already accepting the meeting for those that clicked that box. We got the notification. Thank you.
Great, thanks for the update, Eric. All right, anyone else?
Hi, this is Lark Starkey. I'm currently working at Tetra Tech. I was with the state and San Diego Water Board for a number of years. And I'm kind of back in the bacteria world. And so just here to kind of listen and learn. And it's good to see y'all.
For being here.
Hi, I'll introduce, now a good time to introduce myself?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm Eric Dubinsky. I'm with US EPA Region 9. And I'm with the Water Quality Standards and Assessment section in our office. We're in San Francisco. Filling the role here for Terry Fleming, who I'm sure many of you know. He retired this past summer. So I'll be working as the our region's beach coordinator. So that means I'll be working with the state of California on the Beach Act grant program. So, we provide some funding for recreational beach water quality monitoring. I've been at this workshop or work group a few times in the past. Prior to joining EPA in 2020, I was a researcher with the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and so I did work on microbial source tracking methods, and so I've been a part of a few studies around the state, as well as with SQUIRP and looking at different source tracking methods. So I do have a background in some of this stuff, and yeah, we'll be talking a little bit more at the next meeting about the Justice 40 initiative and how it is applying to the Beach Act program at EPA. So Justice 40 is an executive order from the Biden administration that some federal grant programs need to ensure that at least 40% of the benefits from those programs are going toward communities with environmental justice concerns. And so right now, EPA is evaluating how that can be applied to the Beach Act program. And so we're working with the state right now, looking at how EPA is categorizing beaches to determine whether or not, they would fall within the parameters that would qualify it as a beach with environmental justice concerns, and how we're going to develop that and apply it to the beach program. So you'll be hearing a bit more from us in May at the May meeting about how that program is evolving. But right now, just happy to be here and look forward to meeting you all in person sometime.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Eric. Yeah, we look forward to learning more about the program. All right. So is there anyone else that hasn't introduced themselves yet? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you all so much for saying hello and for giving us your updates. And I'm going to jump into some of our informational items. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Okay. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is share with you guys how to sign up for the work group updates, the LYRIS updates. So I think pretty much everyone is aware, but just in case, I want to make sure that you guys know how to do that. So let me take you through this real quick. Okay, so the way I do it from our water board's website is I scroll down all the way to the bottom of the page, and then I go to resources. And then from there, you'll find email subscriptions. And then you'll go to the state water board link. And then here's where you can sign up with your email address, your name. And then under general interests, you'll find all the relevant work group meetings. So the Northern and Southern work group meetings, which is combined into this meeting now, and the Safe to Swim network meeting. So the one that Eric mentioned. So you can get updates for the meetings as well as any other relevant information that you need to know. All right, so that's that. And then, oops. Okay, sorry. And then I wanted to talk about the quality assurance program plan. And Kat might want to chime in on this as well, but I'll just give you a brief overview. So we just finished phase 1 of the QA-PRP, which Michelle Robbins has taken the lead on and then submitted to the US EPA for approval. What it does is it documents our current beach program processes and standards and what we're currently doing. And it's a requirement for our program to continue receiving funding. And we're not making any changes to the program currently. We're just documenting what we do. So once that document is approved, we'll send copies your way. Kat, is there anything you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, and I'll just say, well, thank you for that update, Amanda. And I'll just add that this is something that we're going to continue working on and updating to make sure that our data generated for the program is of known and comparable quality, things like that, and that we're meeting this requirement to have the quality assurance program plan in place and meet all of the specific requirements for that. So we will be modifying it over time, and we'll engage with you all on any changes that we may make to the program, and we can talk about like how we might do that, what might be the best approach, things to consider, because I know there are some differences between how some of the counties, implement their sampling program, and the idea is to try and streamline that and make it consistent as much as possible to ensure that the data is comparable.
Yeah, thank you, Kat.
Yeah.
All right. So the next item, which Eric just talked about, but oh, Mario, did you have a question?
Yeah, regarding the QAP, the Quality Assurance Program, is that specific to beaches, or does that apply to tributaries which discharge to beaches too, or is there a difference there?
It just applies to the beaches that meet the AB 411 criteria, so the coastal beaches.
Got it, thanks.
Mhm.
All right, and then yeah, I just wanted to touch on the Justice 40 initiative, which Eric talked about, and this is just some information about it. It's, the goal is to divert benefits to disadvantaged communities and make sure that, specifically for us, making sure that those beaches in disadvantaged communities are being monitored and have notifications. And yeah, so Eric is going to talk more about that at our next meeting. So looking forward to that.
And real quick before we move on from that, just to let everyone know that we may be circulating a list of beaches that were identified for y'all to just kind of go through and confirm whether or not it's monitored, if there are anything like local or region specific knowledge about whether or not a beach is likely to qualify as a beach that the disadvantaged communities go to, things like that. There's, there may be like local programs for transporting people to beaches that we don't know about. So a beach may be further away from a disadvantaged community. It might not be on the list, but it probably should be if there is such a program, things like that. So the more local knowledge about the beaches, we might have you guys review the list and share some information with us.
Yeah, thank you for making that point, Kat. I meant to mention that, and I will send out that list to you guys so that you can start reviewing it and making any comments or adding any beaches that you think need to be included. All right, and then I'll also just mention the Bacteria Summit briefly, since Rebecca will be doing a presentation on it today. So it was held in September. And mostly I wanted to mention that there are resources available to review the presentations and the video from that summit. So I'm going to show you where you can find those as well. Okay, so you can find them on the bacterial objectives page of the State Water Board website. I think it's easiest just to search for bacterial objectives here. And then once you're on the page, you can click on Bacteria Summit. And there are 3 videos available here for each day of the summit, as well as each presentation throughout the days. So it's a great resource to look over if you want to learn more about a certain topic. Okay. And then lastly, I just wanted to share that the grant agreements are on their way to being executed. I think a few of them have been executed. But since they were not executed in time for Q1 invoices to be submitted, we're asking that you wait to submit your invoices until Q2. So that will be due January 20th. And to combine your expenses for Q1 and Q2 into one invoice. That'll just make it easier for us to review your invoice packages, as well as like provide any comments or any adjustments to you guys. So it'll just make for a more streamlined process. I've gotten a few questions about that. So if anybody has questions about the invoicing, feel free to bring them up now. All right, great. And you can always email me too, if anything comes up in particular. I think that's pretty much it for updates. So we'll go ahead and move on to our presentations for the day. And Rebecca Fitzgerald is up first with the highlights and next steps for the Bacteria Summit. So Rebecca, I'll let you take over. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Amanda, and hello again, everybody. I don't know many of the names who I see on the screen, so I will just really quickly start by saying hello and introduce myself. I am with the State Water Board in the Division of Water Quality, and I manage all of our standards and assessment work. So when we do statewide projects that are associated with rulemaking for beneficial uses or setting new water quality objectives, such as the bacteria objectives that we updated in 2018. All of that's within my shop, including all the work that Amanda and Kat do with our beach water quality work group. I also have a role in 303D impaired water assessments. So that's the hat that I wear here at the Water Board. Previously was with the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. But happy to be here at DWQ, absolutely. So I am going to take the next half hour or so and give some highlights of what we talked about at our Bacteria Summit in September. And Amanda, thanks for showing everybody where to find the information about that from those 3 days. It was a great 3 days. It was a lot of really good discussion. I'm just going to share a handful of slides that I think might be most helpful for giving you a highlight of what we talked about, as well as kind of the outcomes. Excuse me. And I also want to talk a little bit about our next steps. So if you guys will give me a minute, I'm going to share my screen potentially. See, it's much easier to talk than to try to figure out all the different, I'm so used to Teams that when I get into Zoom, I'm not sure how to do this.
Would you like me to share it, Rebecca?
I think that would be great, Amanda. I'd really appreciate that because I'm not seeing a easy share my screen option.
Okay.
Huh. Oh, there it is. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Just let me know when to advance.
Yeah, and then if you guys have questions, anything you want to add as I go through, just raise your hand, let me know. Feel free to speak up. I know some of you were actually at the summit and have your own thoughts and take homes, I suspect, from it. But let me say that it was a 3-day event, and actually you can go to the next slide. There it is. So it was a 3-day event. We here at the Water Boards, we co-hosted it with the California Stormwater Quality Association, or CASQA. And you'll actually see here on the title that I have now changed the title. When we hosted this, we called it the California Bacteria Summit. I'm now calling it our first California Bacteria Summit because we're working on a second right now. And I think we are going to, with some regularity, come back and talk about all things indicator bacteria in future years. And so I'm starting to call it our first one, and we're working on the second, and there will be more in the future. But the purpose of all of this really was to understand what it means to have waters that are safe to swim, associated, may I add, with fecal indicator bacteria. And then also, what does it mean to have waters that have shellfish that are safe to eat? And based on the latest science, the latest learnings, and then really to identify actions needed to achieve those outcomes. And then there's a link to the same webpage that Amanda shared. Yeah, this all started, the summit really started in conversations that the water boards here that we had with CASQA, as they were asking us to take on some potential standards changes to our statewide bacteria objectives. And I think that there was a real recognition at the time that those of us who are working on indicator bacteria across California, be it in different regional water board offices or outside of the water boards, we have various levels of understanding of where our current objectives are based on, what's the latest in terms of metrics and science and risk associated with bacteria for both recreational purposes and for shellfish harvesting purposes. And we would all benefit from kind of a state of the science sort of discussion and presentation and almost conference kind of event. And then there's also a recognition that we have a lot of different perspectives out there as to what we should be focusing on in the world of bacteria. How do we best control the sources? How do we best measure? How best do we report? And so we wanted to provide a space where we could hear all of those different perspectives. And so what came out of that was this summit with, again, the purpose is, well, it's not even on the slide, but really one of the key purposes was education and sharing some of the latest science. But all of that was to the larger goal of better understanding what do we need to do in order to get to a place where it's safe to swim and safe to eat shellfish. And then of those actions, what do we prioritize? Next slide, please. So this slide actually repeats some of just what I said, but it is all to why did we do this? Why did we host this summit? Why did we invest this time? And why did so many of us invest this time? A recognition that we have the shared goals. I think many of us really do want to get to a place where waters are safe to get in and swim and recreate in. We all love our beaches. We all love our rivers and streams. But that we do have different perspective. And so the intent for this summit was really to create a place for talking to each other and figuring out what we want to do next. I think in the end, we had a pretty good group of people who attended. We had probably about 75 people in the room with us face to face. And then we also offered an online viewing option. And I'm not sure how many people were able to attend then. So we, I think, got a pretty good range of perspectives, although a lot of the people who were in attendance were probably you or your colleagues, those who represent folks who are actively monitoring for bacteria, our regulated community, those who work for municipalities that are discharging with permit requirements. And we had less participation from some environmental groups, some non-governmental organizations, and some tribal representatives as well. And some of that was because we, it's always hard to find 3 days that work for everybody. And so I just wanted to recognize kind of the makeup of the people that we heard from and the perspectives that we heard from. And the desire to keep hearing different perspectives, you'll hear more about, because that's what's leading us to starting to plan a second version of the summit. Next slide, please, Amanda. So I'm just going to share couple of the slides that were shared during the 3 days of the September summit. Just to give you a flavor of what was discussed. This slide shows our current 303 delisted impaired water bodies for fecal indicator bacteria. And we talked about this and just some other information to kind of set the stage for why bacteria is important. We do have a range of both freshwater and ocean beaches, I think, as you guys are all very aware, that have exceedances of our water quality objectives that can indicate that there is a potential risk for people when they get in the water and recreate or when they eat shellfish. Next slide. We also talked and recognized, I would say, the range of challenges that are associated with dealing with this particular issue. You know, and one of those challenges is just by the nature of pathogen indicators. We're trying to get a handle on risk when people get into the water or eat shellfish. And we're using, I think, as many of you are well aware, we're using a culturable indicator or several such indicators as E. coli, enterococci, fecal coliform still in our ocean waters. Those are the parameters that we're trying to use because we have the data that links epidemiologically to risk of people getting sick. But those are just a few indicators of what could be a lot of different viruses, other bacteria types, other pathogens that could make us sick. So we recognize that that we just have limitations, I would say, that there are other pathogens out there that we may not be accurately measuring for. And then we also recognize that just within the metrics that we're using, the methods are slow. We're trying to get more rapid indicators. But there are times when we're posting signage for people to let them know that that they might not want to get into the water. That's based on last week's data. If we're doing really well, it's based on yesterday's data. And we're not actually able to, at least with data, say that water is okay here right now for you to get in. We also talked a lot about the different types of sources that can contribute to pathogens in our waters, recognizing there's human waste, waste from cows, birds, seals and sea lions, from dogs, and that there are different levels of risks to humans getting sick from those different source types. So that was we had some technical discussions on those points that I thought were really interesting. We also had discussions and recognized the challenges around the different pathways that the sources, the waste moves into our water bodies, wastewater discharges, stormwater runoff, agricultural discharges, recreation itself. So we did have some discussion about different source types, and those that was also really interesting that you can go back to. We also talked about both the recreation piece as well as the shellfish harvesting pieces, knowing that they have different metrics, different pathways, and different work that's happening to address sources that impact both or separate ones. For what it's worth, I'll just share here that one of the things I really was interested in one of the reasons I was really interested in getting involved and helping to host this bacteria summit is that we have different objectives for both shellfish and recreational uses. We know we need to take a really good look at our shellfish beneficial uses and our water quality objectives. We also know that there's more work around rec. We have limited staff. We're struggling with where do we put some of our standards staff on shellfish or on rec. So it just kind of is one example of many of why we wanted to all get everybody's perspective about what's most critical to work on, which all comes back to the resources, right? We all only have limited resources in which to address these issues, and hence the need to try to prioritize. Next slide. one of the things I really actually enjoyed about the summit was that there were a few discussions about the progress that has been made and how important it is for us all to recognize that bacteria conditions really, in some cases, really have improved. This is a slide that was shown from the San Diego area, highlighting the difference in the number of coastal beaches that are listed on the 303D list as impaired. The map with more of the red dots is from the 2002 303D list. Map under now with more of the green dots is 10 years later. It's the 2022 303D list. Just showing that we have fewer impaired beaches now, in part because of some of the bacteria control work that has been happening up and down the state. One of the, I would say, points that came out of the summit, or that was at least clearly expressed in the summit, is that I think there's been a lot of progress made, especially in dry weather bacteria levels, and our, being able to see real improvements and a much better attainment in the summer. It's the wet weather. It's when we have runoff. It's when we have the really high concentrations. Well, we continue to see really high concentrations of bacteria in wet weather. And that's where the challenge now for all of us is how do we address that? How do we better assess that? Next slide. We also took an afternoon and talked a lot about regulatory and permitting issues with just some education and background about how we at the Water Board go about regulating bacteria. And this is just one slide out of a whole afternoon's worth of discussion, but I thought I would share it here just to kind of do some further education for those of you who may not know that when we regulate within the water boards, we always start with our beneficial uses. And that's foundational for us. What are the uses that we're trying to protect for? When we're talking about indicator bacteria, it's recreation, right? It's water contact recreation, and it's also shellfish harvesting. And then building from the uses, what are the numeric levels? What are the water quality objectives that need to be put in place to protect those uses? If those levels are not being met, then we have an option of developing a TMDL, a total maximum daily load, in which to lay out a plan to attain those uses, attain those numbers, and restore water quality. And following from TMDLs, we develop permits in which there are limitations and requirements to, again, try to attain those objectives and ultimately the uses. One of the things I'll highlight on the slide is that long arrow over top of TMDLs, because we can and often do, the water boards often do go from setting objectives to implementing permits without first developing a TMDL. TMDL is not necessary, but is a helpful tool when we do have impaired waters. Next slide. So the next few slides that I'm going to show here today are taken, well, as are some of the others, but these are taken directly from our last day of the summit, in which we were trying to pull together all the different conversations and perspectives that we heard. So these are kind of the takeaways and the key principles. And I would say that at the end of those 3 days, the group pretty much came away with what I'm going to read through here. That the goal remains the same as when we started the summit, that we are striving towards water that is safe to swim in and safe to eat shellfish from. There was definitely a takeaway that a risk-based perspective is important. And that's in terms of measuring, monitoring, source control. And associated with that, the source type matters. Be it human, we heard that the riskiest sources for making people sick is human waste and also cattle waste, but also that not every source has the same level of risk. And if you don't have human and you don't have cattle, but you do have other sources, there still can be risk there. We talked about opportunities for water quality standards, our uses, our objectives. Some of the takeaways are that the current objectives are E. coli and enterococci fecal coliform numbers. They're most indicative of risk when there are high levels of human sources. That's when those numbers best match to risk of illness. The higher enterococci or E. coli threshold, a higher threshold for those parameters, it may be appropriate, a higher level than what our current objective is, may be appropriate when sources are not as risky. And in those scenarios, a risk modeling tool, the quantitative microbial risk analysis, QMRA, could be a useful tool, could lead to, for example, development of site-specific objectives. And that if we go into that QMRA modeling world, well, we should have communication about it. I'll get to that later, but there was definitely one of the kind of outcomes, I think, was a recognition that a framework from the water boards on how going through a QMRA process would work would be really helpful. We also talked about implementation. There was definitely an outcome takeaway that controlling controllable sources is really where it's at. And prioritizing source control for fecal source types with the greatest illness risk. Again, that's the human and the cattle that we really heard about. We also recognize that accountability is incredibly important in all of this. And we have a level of accountability to ensure that our water quality is attained through our current water quality objectives. And we have a duty to be accountable to all the people of California. And again, there was recognition that having a framework or a toolbox laid out for implementation that really does kind of focus on controlling controllable sources, prioritizing sources with the highest risk, having that framework would be really helpful for everybody. Next slide. Continuing with takeaways and principles, there was a lot of discussion about the need for all of us to take action, partner, and a message. That messaging is really critical, that as we go about working on bacteria, we should do it still with joint fact-finding, partnering, collective action. And then some of the other bullets are there is that we're all really helpful. We should work more with our public health experts through expert panels, highlight successes. There's a lot of monitoring that's being conducted by you guys and by other folks that are collecting data for permitting requirements. And there's data and information that we can learn from those reports. And that we have an obligation to communicate to the public so that they can understand the risks accurately and in more real time. We barely touched on some of the more technical details about how we monitor, how we do data analysis, and what metrics we use. But the next bullets really do get to those points, and there was some recognition that we need consistent and comparable data. And we need technology that allows us to monitor both doing source tracking and rapid real-time data. And there are tasks associated with attaining both of those that we also should consider prioritizing. Next slide. So those were really the takeaways. As far as what's coming next, this slide sort of gets to that. So, and I mentioned this also in talking about that this was the September summit was our first summit. We're now working on summit number 2. We are very much engaged with Luke. I know you're on the phone from Heal the Bay, California Coastkeeper Alliance, several other organizations who are not at the September summit, and we want to hear from them. All of this with the goal of continuing to get perspectives, understand what priorities are, all again with trying to make it so that our waters are safer to swim in and shellfish are safer to eat. I will say that I'm thinking right now roughly that second summit's going to be in the spring. We don't have an exact date yet, but as we know more, I'm sure we'll share with this group. And then we want to do a few report outs from the September summit. Pasqua and ourselves, we're going to pull together a highlights. I know we already have all the slides, but we kind of want to pull together a report that we can all have in front of us to really kind of just document what we talked about in our takeaways. And then John Bishop made a really good suggestion while we were there at the summit to reconvene for a one-day, everybody gets back together to discuss outcomes and next steps. What's not here on the slide, but is something that I'm very much thinking about, is that there's a lot that we could do to improve how we address bacteria. I think we are all aware of that. Within the water boards, we need to have some conversations amongst us in the standard side and those of the regional water boards who are permit writers. And after I think we have our second bacteria summit and get some more perspectives on all of this, I would like us at the water boards to kind of caucus, get together and figure out what we can take on in the next year or two and put together something of a work plan and likely something of a needs analysis. And I think that would be really helpful for all of those of you who would like to see the water boards continue to move forward on bacteria, could give some structure to what we will do, what we would like to do if we could, or in the future, or as we have more resources. Next step, or next slide. So that is, hopefully at least a flavor of what we talked about over those 3 days. There's the link again to the information, my email and phone number. If you guys have any questions, anything you want to follow up with me on, I'm happy to chat. And I just realized, Amanda, I just have been talking for almost my whole time, but I am happy to take any questions. I know several of you guys were in the room for the summit. Is there anything that you guys want to share that I didn't, that you think others would be interested in hearing?
I just want to say we have like some little buffer time at the end for today, so we have time to take questions.
And I got the sun now coming in right between my curtains. So.
I just want to comment on that the summit was very well run. Great 3 days of discussion, and I also appreciate Rebecca's summary here and also at the CASCO conference as well. That's a very good summary. We look forward to the continued dialogue.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I appreciate all that you guys contributed to during the summit, and I know I'm looking forward to all the work you're doing and your presentation next, by the way. All right. Well, we'll come back to the group too. I know that I suspect anyway that there's a lot of interest from all of you as we continue to move forward on bacteria issues. So I really appreciate that this group exists and is a really good forum to report out and get input back. All right, well, you guys know how to reach me if anything else comes up.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Appreciate you going over this. All right, so yeah, and if any questions come up, like Rebecca said, feel free to reach out to her or our team, and we're happy to share information. So with that, we can go ahead and move on to our next presentation. We have up next John Ping, Stella Shaw, and Vanessa Fulsi-Raj, who are going to be sharing about source investigation in Newport Bay. So I'll let you guys take over. Thank you.
Sounds good. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. Before I start, because this is a team effort, I just want to give a chance to Stella and Vanessa to introduce themselves. So for me, my name is John Penn. I'm the supervisor for North Orange County Monitoring and Assessment. So we do hydrological water quality, weather monitoring throughout North Orange County, and I'm the project manager for this project. Stella?
Hi everyone, my name is Stella Shao. I'm from GSI Environmental. Previously, I am an Orange County Public Works staff as well. I've been involved in my career with a lot of the source investigation, bacteria provisions review, and 303D listing reviews. Our current company, GSI Environmental, we also deal with a lot of the permit compliance and investigation credit program development as well. I'm happy to be here and share with you all about the new Port Bay watershed source tracking. Thank you.
So I don't see Vanessa here. Vanessa, if you are here, just to pop up and introduce yourself. Otherwise, we'll proceed with the presentation.
Hi, John, I'm here. So good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. And my name is Vanessa Bolsteraj. I am representing Michael Baker International. I'm assisting the county with the implementation of the source investigation in Newport Bay. I have my PhD from UCLA, where I also have a joint appointment and teach environmental microbiology in the civil and environmental engineering department there. And then I work with Michael Baker on a lot of bacteria work in Newport Bay, as well as in South County, helping assist the county with implementation of the comprehensive human waste source reduction strategy work plan as well. So very excited to be here and looking forward to talking to all of you. Thank you.
Great, let's get started. So the outline of today's presentation about our project, I'm gonna actually start with giving some regulatory background because this is a TMDL and time schedule order mandate. I'm gonna present how the study design was formulated and how the different pieces work together. Stella and Vanessa is gonna carry on to introduce some preliminary findings because we're still in the midst of the study source investigation, but we're wrapping up. So the findings we're going to present pretty much are going to be the preliminary findings. So after the final report and data compilation, we probably can formulate our messaging or the findings a little bit better. So we're just eager to share with the expert group here, and hopefully we have a good discussion. We also had present the similar content at CASPER conference last month, and it was pretty well received, but 20 minutes are a little bit short. So we had some good discussions afterwards. So hopefully today we have time to accommodate a little bit more questions. So we're also going to talk about next steps, including how the study design investigations actually inform future work, including source mitigation and pollution prevention plan. So before I start, I'll just give everybody a kind of orientation where the study area is. On the right, can you see the cursor? Oh, good. So on the right, this is the Newport Bay watershed. So it's in the center of the Orange County. So different colors indicate different land uses. Basically, we have a little bit open space that's on the peripheral of the watershed, but about 90% of the watershed is highly urbanized. And all of the water actually flows into the Newport Bay, and the inset is on the left. So that's the upper and lower Newport Bay. Upper Bay is, you know, a marine protected area that's mostly salt marsh and other protected area with no swimming. But the lower bay, that's actually one of the largest pleasure harbor in the nation with a lot of boats and also some many swimming beaches And I want to highlight there is a little pouch right here. It's called Newport Dunes. It's a recreational area that has the highest recreational use. So probably the vast majority of the swimming actually takes place here. That's going to be one of the priority area for our source investigation. So in terms of the regulatory background, we had this Newport Bay fecal coliform TMDL since 1999. Interestingly, we have both recreation and shellfish harvesting TMDLs. So that's kind of unique. So the Rec 1 part of the TMDL expired in 2014. And for the shell part, we just had a basin plan amendment adopted by regional board earlier this month. And I think right now it's in the state board to be processed. So, after the recreation TMDL deadline has passed, we are really close, but not quite attaining all the TMDL targets. So there was a legal challenge brought up, and there was a stakeholder process that involved all of the watershed partners and stakeholders that we gathered together to discuss the issue, and the discussions pretty much shaped the path forward, including a time schedule order to give more time to do additional work and including this work. So the time schedule order, or TSO, was adopted in 2019. And in the TSO, there are several tasks, 4 core tasks. So task 1 and 2, these are for BMP implementation and planning. Task 1 is just to do the low-hanging fruits, do this, do that, including many activities within the bay. Task 2 is to look at feasibilities of potential projects. Task 3, which is the project that we're going to talk about today, is for bacteria source investigation with an emphasis on human sources. Task 4 is to develop a pollution prevention plan, or PPP. So basically, based on the findings of this source investigation, we go out and do project implementation and planning. So all of this activity is going to fit into the future TMDL revision and implementation. So just a quick flow chart for task 3. That includes task 3A, which is the investigation itself. Task 3B is the final report. And then task 4, that's the PPP, is going to be based on the findings of task 3. So there's also some nexus with task 2, which is project planning, because at that time we're pretty crunched in time. And for task 2, these are the project concepts and potential implementation. Whether this project is going to be implemented, it really depends on the findings of the task 3 in terms of loading, in terms of risk assessment. So this is how the different tasks are connected to each other. So as I mentioned, this project actually was allocated pretty short period of time. So altogether, we only have 12 months to do the source investigation and reporting. And because the time required for data analysis and reporting, we estimated to be 2 months. We only have 10 months to actually conduct the source investigation itself. So we used the time to actually gather all of the information and support from the different group. So when the project study design was being considered, we convened actually a source investigation work group that actually include a pretty good representation from different stakeholder group that include regional board staff, environmental group here at in our watershed. It's mostly coastkeeper. SCORP are consulted as a technical expert. We also have our public works folks and also OC Healthcare Agency who actually do the routine monitoring around the bay. We have TMDL funding partners, basically the cities and the special districts in the watershed, and local sewer agencies. So by working with them to advise and support the source investigation, study design, they also, during the process, they facilitated source investigation activities. Really, I want to highlight the communication with regional board, the support from the cities and sewer agencies, and of course, healthcare agency. You know, they conducted the bulk of the routine work, and they supported the HF 183 analysis as well. And we also had a pretty good communication with all of the stakeholders, including regional board. We have bi-weekly meetings, monthly funding partners meeting, and bi-monthly meetings specifically with regional board staff. So this is just a quick rundown of the potential pathogen sources. As I mentioned, the TMDL actually is based on fecal indicator bacteria, or specifically fecal coliform. However, increasingly, as Rebecca also hinted, the focus are more and more on what actually caused people to get sick or cause the shellfish to unsuitable for consumption. So by looking at the actual pathogen sources, we hope that our work can actually fit into the future work that focus on the human health risk. So there's, of course, the sewer exfiltration, including sanitary sewer overflows, the pipe leaks or private lateral leaks. There are also vessel pump outs. That's basically, you know, what's going to happen when there are a lot of boats in the harbor. And we knew in the past, this could be a pretty big source. The TMDL has 0 allocation for them, by the way. We also had a good discussion on unsheltered persons. You know, Stella's gonna talk a little bit more about that. We have septic tanks more on the peripheral of the watershed. There are unincorporated area that still use septic tanks. There are also illegal discharges, dumpings, and other things that could be a source. For the more or less on the uncontrollable or the background sources could include wildlife, pets, and other animals. There could also be some naturally occurring pathogens. So this is just a list of issues. And you know, when we actually designed the source investigation study design, I didn't do it in the vacuum. Basically, you know, there are excellent work in Santa Barbara, in San Diego, and other folks. SCORP also did a lot of, work previously, including drafting the MST guidance. You know, these are all fed into the study design. So the implementation actually incorporated all of the best information there is when the design was developed. So our topic is a two-pronged approach. So again, this is because we only have a very short period of time. Just by going the so-called bottom-up approach, which, you know, you do the monitoring, and if there are high numbers, you go upstream to track the sources. This is gonna take a very long time because, you know, as Stella is gonna show you, there are a lot of complicating factors. So the two-pronged approach include a top-down approach as well. So basically, we incorporate all of the information that was available at the beginning of the study design, including the information such as sewer infrastructure, including the soil type, including land use, and other the factors that I mentioned, including unsheltered person, HF 183 data, recent SSO occurrence, septic tanks locations, and the data we have accumulated. And we actually build the dashboard based on the data accumulation, sanitary survey, and make the dashboard actually a living document and we intend to keep it as well, because once we have this prioritization of the watershed, this will be especially useful when we do wet weather investigation, because for wet weather, it's impossible to just mechanically go from downstream upstream, because in Southern California, we have a very unpredictable and short storms. It's very difficult to do that. So this dashboard and catchment prioritization help us to do more effective source investigation. It's also a good communication tool for us to communicate with stakeholders and regulators as well. So now I'm just gonna go to the gist of the study design. So this is the map that's a little bit tricky to read from the beginning. So I will just go with the flow chart. So we start, so this is for dry weather. And on the left, this is the receiving water monitoring. So basically in the bay, we have a couple dozen monitoring stations. And on the top right, these are the drainage area prioritization and source investigation, and lower right, that's the, if we find source area, how we gonna do the source investigation and mitigation. So everything starts with routine bay monitoring. So this is done by a healthcare agency. If there is a posting, we will ask the healthcare agency staff to do sanitary survey and take a repeat sample. This repeat sample include that for fecal indicator bacteria and HF183 analysis. So if the repeat sample, the fecal indicator bacteria exceeds the threshold, the sample will be analyzed for HF183. If the repeat sample does not go over the threshold, the HF183 will usually not analyzed for HF183. This is because we have 35 stations around the bay. It'll be very cost prohibitive if we do HF183, for all of the samples, because they're collected weekly. So by doing this, we feel like this is the best way to capture any human source risks by doing this routine monitoring. So if it is posted twice, as I mentioned, a sanitary survey is going to be conducted. And if that happens, we're going to actually look for nearby storm drain impact by sampling the storm drain and then update the prioritization map. As I mentioned, the dashboard actually includes a mechanism to incorporate data. And we're going to update that one and to conduct source investigation. So by taking samples, so this is where the information from the bay monitoring going to fit into the investigation. But we also have weekly and monthly freshwater monitoring as well to fit into the prioritization map. And by doing that, we're gonna see if this freshwater input, including the ones inferred from the bay monitoring and the routine drain monitoring, whether the action thresholds are exceeded. If they are, we're gonna see, okay, if this is the area that's small enough for us to do source mitigation, because if this is a really big area, it's impossible. We have to go upstream to do more sampling to narrow down the area so that we can do source mitigation. So this is the do loop. So basically we continue to trace upstream to narrow down the area. If actually the threshold was not exceeded, we'll just use this information to update the prioritization map. So this is for wet weather outfall prioritization. So again, on the left, this is for the bay, and on the right, this is the drainage area source investigation. So basically, oh, sorry, there is a little bit offset of the arrow. Basically, for this starts with combining all of the information to feed into the prioritization map, because for wet weather, it's very short period. We have to accumulate data. And after we have the information, the additional sampling, again, will feed into the decision tree whether the action thresholds are exceeded or not. If it did not exceed the action threshold, again, we go back to the do loop, basically accumulate the information. If the action threshold was exceeded, we're gonna actually, the do loop gonna go through the process of, this storm, we narrow down the, we know that upstream there are sources, and next time around, we'll, based on the information in the next storm, we're gonna go upstream where the sources are. So, and all of the information, again, will be fed into the prioritization dashboard. And if a terminal source area, that means a small enough area that we could do source investigation is identified, we're going to do the source investigation. That includes coordinating with the local jurisdiction, doing source investigation, source mitigation, and other items. So we actually had some activities that Stella and Vanessa is going to talk about later. So maybe Stella, you can take over from now, or we can accommodate questions probably later on.
Thank you, John. I'm going to quickly go through some of the action threshold we use for follow-up actions. And then Vanessa is gonna talk a little bit about the status of the beach, and I'll take over again to talk about the source investigation preliminary findings. So as John mentioned earlier, from the bottom-up methodology, we use action threshold to trigger the next steps. And the threshold, there are two kind of categories. One is mainly focused on the fecal indicator bacteria that is tested during the routine monitoring effort. We also use human HF1A3 human markers, as everybody have probably been pretty familiar with, that indicated human risk. And that will also be used to trigger source investigations. We have kind of 3 different types of water bodies that we're dealing with under the umbrella of Newport Bay. We are dealing with marine waters, which is the sea water where most of recreational is happening. And we use fecal indicator bacteria at Enterococcus, standard deviate STV value 110 as our trigger to test for resampling and sample for human markers. For human markers, we use the receiving water target 525 gene copies per 100 ml, which from Stanford's studies, and many people have probably seen that encounter this number, representing a similar risk of human contact, recreational contact use, similar as defined in the bacterial provision. So in a nutshell, for marine waters, because there are recreational activity used, our trigger are either the water quality target, which is for FIB, or equivalent sort of equivalency risk in terms of human markers. For freshwater, we have the main channels that go in large streams. Those are the ones that collects a lot of small drainage and discharge directly to the bay. We use fecal indicator bacteria levels that is based on 75th percentile of historical journal data. Most of those are mass emission sets, so we have a very long history data that we can use to help us establish that value. And for human HF1A3, we still use 525 gene copies of 100 ml, which representing equivalent risk level just as the marine waters. So for freshwater main drains, we're using those two as our trigger for source investigation. For smaller drains, we can use different levels. FIB is 90th percentile based on historical drain data. The historical drain data is mainly from our dry weather monitoring program, which focus on each of those individual types that coming from each smaller drainage area into the freshwater main channel. So those are not direct discharge to the bay, and we use this number as our main trigger for next. And for H1Y3, we use 4100 gene copies and 100, which is more focusing on the smaller drain that is considered more equivalent levels of risk. So for freshwater, so those are the 3 action thresholds that we use for our water bodies for follow-up actions, source investigation actions. And now I'm going to have Vanessa just to give us a quick brief update in terms of the routine bay and watershed monitoring effort.
Thanks, Stella. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So there are 2 parts to the source investigation. The first is routine bay and watershed monitoring, and the second is special studies and further source tracking, which Stella will review afterwards. So overall, with both phases of the study, our goal is to try to determine what is the condition of the bay and are the drains impacting the bay? Specifically, what are the major sources of FIB and human markers in this watershed? And what is the mass loading from FIB and human markers into the bay from freshwater outfalls? Are MS4 permanent discharges actually impacting the bay, and can we determine where the areas are for higher risk that would require subsequent mitigation and source elimination? So specifically, I'll cover the routine monitoring. This is as of October. And the routine monitoring is carried out, as John mentioned, by the healthcare agency at 31 marine stations, as well as 4 freshwater stations. Overall, they are collecting the majority of the samples because they collect 35 sites weekly. To date, we have over 1,000 samples collected. As of November, it was 1,252 samples. And we also sample 13 freshwater channels and drains. Those drain sites are highlighted by the stars on the map. They were sampled weekly for 10 weeks, and then based on low bacteria concentrations, they were moved to monthly sampling. Overall, what we're seeing at beach sites sampled by the healthcare agency is that there's approximately 6% beach sites that have triggered resampling. Again, how the study design was written is that HCA collects a sample, weekly sample on Monday. If it's above the action level of 110 CFU per 100 ml for enterococcus, then HCA goes and takes a resample, and that sample can then be analyzed for HF183 and a sanitary survey is collected. However, we found that none of our resamples had quantifiable levels of HF183. In terms of our freshwater drains that were sampled, we had 3 samples that were above the HF183 threshold. So we do see about 17% of our drain sites that are triggering the HF183 action level. For those 3 samples, it actually triggers upstream source ID investigation because they're above the action level. And so the concentrations being that high means that something might be going on and it warrants further investigation. Currently, approximately 62 sanitary surveys have been collected. Weekly surveys were collected at Newport Dunes because this area was prioritized due to the high recreational use, as well as Arches Drain. And then monthly samples and sanitary surveys were taken at those two sites. In addition, sanitary surveys were always collected anytime a resample was conducted at a marine beach site. Okay, so as I mentioned, we had certain samples that did trigger upstream source investigation. So Stella, do you want to go ahead and take over?
Sure, yeah. So as Vanessa just said that mostly of the routine samples are fairly at the bay side, at the beach side are in a pretty good conditions. But we do have some area that we'll consider a priority area as shown on this map here. And some of those are selected based on the reason that it is highly used beach. Some of the area we do have, we have observed elevated HM93. Those locations are fairly upstream, away from the beach, but we still selected them as our priority sites because they contribute to the beach eventually. And my portion we're going to cover on a preliminary level is what have been found, what are the sources that have been seen, and there was challenges, and what have we done so far to conquer that. So one of the biggest sources we have observed in our watershed is unsheltered persons. And as you can see from those pictures on the right, trashes were observed, camps were observed. There's also bleached places were observed during our sampling event. I've seen people planting trees, planting plants in those little pipes. And yeah, a lot of interesting observations as we take investigations in our upper drainage areas. And we also have sampled a pre and after sampling in terms of HM93 after the unsheltered person were cleaned out or the trash were removed. We had 1 or 2 events from some of those drainage areas that showing elevated HM93. After we removed it, we no longer see those signals. But the caveat here is that we're not directly linking this for sure with as a direct source because the data is quite limited in terms of the sampling effort. We have limited information, but obviously the observed conditions here are considered potentially a pretty major source that could contribute human markers into our human sources into the day. However, there are a lot of challenges, social challenges, especially in terms of this type of sources, because those are repetitive and persistent sources. When we clean it this week, 2 weeks later, maybe it's even less than 2 weeks after, they're back. Pretty much for certain high spot area, we pretty much see those repeating encampments every time we go. We go to the we go sampling those areas, and the social economic issue, which is potentially beyond the municipality's control, is also a big challenge for us to deal with this. We can repair the fences, we can clean up the trashes, that's under the municipality's jurisdiction, but to permanently remove encampment, which it may not be quite feasible at this point. Those signals, however, may also mask other potential human sources upstream that we don't even know. So this is kind of some of the challenges. But the municipality, we also work with the cities cooperatively. Every time we saw those issues, we trigger a response team at the city level, the county level to remove those trashes, to repair the fences, to evaluate potential methodology to prevent those encampments into those channels as much as possible, because it's also dangerous during storm season. Those actions have been taken by the municipalities at this point.
So Stella, you sound a little bit muffled at times. If you can move a little bit closer to your microphone, it'll be helpful.
Okay, would it sounds better now?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next source that we noticed in our during our investigation in those multiple areas is sewage filtrations, SSOs. During the study period, I think John probably had more information, is that we do have seen 8 SSOs recorded and tracked in the watershed overall. The other main thing that we find out is root intrusion. It could be one of the main sources for private lateral SSOs. We are conducting CCTVs at one priority site. We also reviewed a bunch of CCTV studies from CCTV videos from another priority study area. Sewer and stone drain biofilm and chemical marker studies are also planned at this point. We do have encountered a bunch of challenges as well, mainly related to the private laterals, because those are outside the jurisdiction of the major sanitation or the city's jurisdiction. There are local ordinance requirements, building code, that require the resident during their construction to conduct the CCTV of their private laterals to evaluate and repair the conditions if needed. In the local area, one of the area we notice is in the Costa Mesa area that there are incentive programs to encourage the resident to get a rebate if they conducted CCTV in their laterals, or install a clean out to better manage their laterals. Those exfiltration signals are often quite weak and inconsistent. As you can see from the map on the most right-hand side, the bottom right-hand side, the signals in terms of human markers are very sporadic. There are certain areas in the main channel that displays high level of human marker from time to time, but it comes and goes. And those are in the main channels. From the smaller pipes, it's even more sporadic. And those actions do require multi-agency collaborations to deal with. And the next 2 slides, I'm going to kind of share a little bit about that specific source. We conducted a CCTV at the first priority site, which is an RV park, kind of near the beach, where beach use is highly likely. And we conducted 3,000 feet CCTV inspected at this area, the laterals. As you can see, most of the conditions are pretty well, just like the right picture, this picture, yes. Those are PVC pipes. Those are all the pipes that connected the RV connections that connect eventually to the sewer systems. Those conditions are fairly well in terms of overall conditions, but we also detected a pretty frequent valleys. Valley is like a little roller. You can imagine a little roller coaster in the piping system. When it's correctly the perfect condition, it does have a downgrade slope, just like the first row. But then if you have a lot of valleys, potentially you're creating some vulnerability in the sewer system when the water is pounding, or maybe the structure over time may have some concerns that could kind of shows potentially leaks out the sewer in the surrounding area. It is more vulnerability, not in exactly the immediate risk for the beach, but it does require some attentions. In terms of long-term BMPs, it could be a pretty expensive replacement effort for the RV park to repair all the valleys in the water. However, in terms of short BMPs with more frequent jettings and CCTVs, we can better assess all those valleys and the area where valley were located to kind of assess the conditions. If those valleys are always ponded with sewer, the CCTV won't be able to see much, as you can see from this picture here. And without knowing how the condition is, it's even harder to assess. So this is kind of the interesting finding for one of the sites. The other location we noticed is mainly root intrusions. As I mentioned that the sanitation district had some good incentives for the resident to look at their sewer laterals. Since 2021, over 50 residents participated in their local rebate program to install clean out or connect CCTVs on private laterals to get a rebate. And we also was able to obtain available inspection record from the area. About 1/3 of the available inspection record did indicate more or less of root issues in their pipe system. And those pictures are some of the pictures directly from their CCTV pipes. As you can see, the root just kind of creeps in. The third one is probably the worst I saw. And also in their area, the new constructions are also required. John, maybe you can work. Yeah. Are required in their building code to perform sewer lateral CCTVs. I think these are really good programs that is already in place. The data, however, are stored, but it's kind of scattered everywhere, which is the big challenge for us to compile and assess the condition in an overall condition wise. But those are good programs in place as a preventive methodology in that area. Next. We also conducted the boat pump out station inspections. As you probably know, in Newport Bay area, there are a lot of boats and harbors. And boat pump out is a location where people haul their waste from their boats. And because these are directly discharged into the bay, so we do want to look at how those conditions are. And we tested out 4 pump out stations, and one of these we conducted dye testing and do notice some leaks. So we were able to repair that, but we haven't seen any H1 hits at any of the samples. So those doesn't appear to be a significant source of human markers, but those programs are in place to conduct as a preventive methodology. We do have some concerns in terms of live aboard boats where people may not directly haul their waste into those designated waste hauler inspections. And those are the information we still don't have a good handle of how many of those are there. And these can potentially be an issue. Next. Septic tanks, those are mainly upstream watershed. And we know that there are quite a bit septic systems upstream in terms of further away from the Bay Area. Those locations may not always hydrological connected to the Newport Bay Area downstream, but these, because those are older infrastructures, we also have quite a bit. We also conducted some surveys to see how likely those can affect downstream conditions. We have seen septic leaks during our past studies, and those septic systems are subject to the state's on-site wastewater treatment system policy requirements, but those are pretty hard to spot, and many are fixed without reporting. But you can see from this right-hand picture, those are directly a leak that we observed during the study. Those signals may be pretty consistent in terms of data, but because we know these are a potential source, the county is taking action to inventory the information, like the picture down here, to further evaluate and conduct PMPs. Next one. We also definitely see sources, some other sources that we frequently concluded is avian and canine markers, dogs and birds. Everybody know at the beach that those are frequently detected sources in terms of contributing for human bacteria. They may not have the highest risk, but they are a frequent source. Definitely a significant source at the beach area. We also noticed that some of the CDS unit on the right-hand side at the bottom, you can see those are ponded water that are meant to collect trashes from the stone drain systems before it is discharged to the bay, but because it kind of creates a breeding ground for bacteria, those can potentially become a bacteria breeding ground itself. We also know that bather shedding is potentially a source at the beach. From our investigation, we haven't seen very significant impact on that yet. We know that wet weather source investigation were conducted, but at this point, the human marker source is quite hard to distinguish. We need more data for that. Majority of the watershed is 100% treated by a large treatment wetland system upstream, multiple upstream wetland systems before it can discharge to the bay. That's one of the highlights that the county and the water district has implemented historically. So even we are conducting marker testings upstream and source investigations. As a second fence, those water bodies are treated by large wastewater wetland systems. So next, that with all the source investigation findings, we are incorporating all the data that we collected, including the routine beach monitoring record in our prioritization dashboard. And this is the dashboard that John previously mentioned that helps us as the top-down methodology. As you can see that from this map, we prioritize, we can insert all the data that we collected, including where the septic tanks is located, where are the hotspot of homeless encampments were observed, as well as human marker data, sewer conditions, how far those locations from the beach, and all those matrix were incorporated in this dashboard to help us prioritize our next step effort. As a summary here, this is a two-pronged approach, works really well in watershed, especially watershed in a size like a Newport Bay, which is pretty big with a tight schedule. The bottom-up approach is based on monitoring. We use a methodology to trigger investigations of problem areas based on our routine monitoring effort. And a lot of the investigation has been triggered based on that. Top-down approach effectively direct the wet weather source investigation, provided real-time dashboard for communication between us, between the project team and the regional board and funding partners to help us prioritize our effort. We do notice that unsheltered persons and private laterals are quite confirmed the top risk factors so far in our watershed. Those sources are very distributed. It's very hard to control, but we are taking steps, baby steps here to cooperate with the agencies to deal with what we can do here. And recreational beneficial use appear to be well protected under the dry weather conditions, as mentioned by Vanessa earlier, that the beach condition overall is pretty well. We don't see a lot of human signals from our data. That is good news here, but we are not stopping our steps to conduct upstream source investigations. As long as there is some smoking guns, we will continue to chase that. But however, we don't have a good silver bullet yet, because a lot of the sources that we observed are quite distributed, persistent, and potentially outside of municipalities' control. So that's pretty much our preliminary findings. And in terms of the project timeline, we are looking at producing our final report in February 2023. And we'll be compiling those information all together into a giant report. But the report itself will help us to direct our next step to conduct projects for the watershed and potentially continue investigations certain priority areas. So this is our project timeline, and that's pretty much it for our presentation. And thank you everybody for our time. We're happy to take any questions if we have some time.
Thank you. Shem, you have a question?
Thank you for the presentation, very well given. Yes, I was curious on how far up the encampments were for the unsheltered folks from the beach line, approximately how many miles, and if you've considered providing maybe porta potties. I know it's a bit late now, but to maybe eliminate that point source.
That's a great question. So basically for the area that we found HF183 hits, these are actually pretty well overlaid with where we found homeless encampment. So they went as far as when the channels first daylighted. So that added, challenges for us to do source investigation. So they could be as far out as 5 miles upstream. So once we, remove the encampment, most of the time we see a removal or the, huge reduction of the human marker. So this is where the source investigation got masked by the encampment because they come back again, so this is one of the things where we found difficult to address, but, as discussed before by the group.
It looks like we have a question from Bonnie in the chat. She's wondering if you can share the PowerPoint. Is that something that people should
Sure, no
email
problem.
you?
Yeah, so I send the PDF to you, Amanda. You can share to the group.
Perfect. Thank you. And Sean, you have a question?
Yeah, hi, good morning. I was curious, you indicated that you investigated the pump out stations in the harbor. We have Channel Islands Harbor up here in Ventura County, and there's a lot of suspicion around people who stay on their boats during the weekends. The county has, contracts with liveaboards where, they're exclusively required to use a pump service or go to the pump out stations. But we have this transient population that comes in on the weekends, stays on their boats. Boats never leave the slips. And, we never have any records associated with their, pump out and that type of thing. So I'm curious if that was investigated at all.
So for this work, the healthcare agency actually inspected some of the pump out stations for the waste haulers. City does most of the work in terms of, inspecting the pump out stations. I think they do it on a weekly basis. At least from what we gathered, for the recent condition, this is not significant source, but you can never say never, right? So this is something that the city took a very close look on. And from what we found by accompanying the inspection and sampling, this doesn't look like a significant source. So that's the preliminary finding we have so far. But that's something that, going into the source investigation, it's an important part of our investigation, but it doesn't appear to be a big source.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, guys? Feel free to share in the chat too.
Thank you for all the work that you guys are doing over there and for the presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Well, if there are no other questions, then we can go ahead and move on to, oh, Jenny, did you have a question?
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to comment. It seems like you guys there's a lot of agencies involved in this project. There's the city, the county, and then you have a consulting firm. I wondered if you could speak on how you made that happen.
Oh, okay. So when we first designed the source investigation work, I convened this multi-stakeholder group to get the best idea, because there are a lot of really good work by different agencies and by different teams. So from the beginning, there was a pretty good participation from regulators, regulated community, sanitary sewer agencies, and healthcare agency. Also the environmental group. So once the study design was finalized through this collaborative process, it's just a contracting with consulting firm to pull it off. Luckily, we had a pretty strong team. The project managers, Vanessa and Stella, they had pretty good experience before, and we also have many other ongoing projects that we actually learn from each other. We know that there are efforts in San Diego and our South Orange County counterpart to do similar work, so we learn from each other. So this is a highly collaborative process.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks again, you guys. And make sure you take down their emails if you have any follow-up questions. But with that, we'll go ahead and move on to Romina Chess, who will be presenting from San Diego County on implementation of DDPCR and how that's going. Romina, if you have a PowerPoint or anything, feel free to share. Let me know if you
I am ready.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, so before we go, can you hear me well? Perfect. So I'm just gonna, basically we're gonna talk a little bit of how DDPCR, the implementation, is going on in San Diego County. My name is Romina, and I work for the Department of Environmental Health and Quality here at San Diego County. I've been working for environmental health pretty much since 2001. I was a hazmat inspector for many years. And in 2018, they requested that I move to this program. I'm actually from Tijuana. So one of the reasons that they requested that I move to this program is because I can help coordinate a lot of the water issues that are coming out from Tijuana and coordinate and build relationships. So that's one of the reasons that I started. So let's just go into it. My job is to minimize the potential risk of illness, right? We all know that ocean swimming is going to give you a potential risk, and my job is to detect these risks, communicate to the public so they can make an informed decision if they want to go to the beach or not on that day. And we do that by various ways, right? The main one is we collect water samples. Once we collect those samples, we communicate results to the public. We take beach management actions based on those results, and we do a lot of public and outreach in our program. But and one of the biggest issues that was affecting our program was the turnaround time for sample results. The regular culture method for 24 hours was just not good enough. We had a lot of mayors and other agencies that were hoping to get faster turnaround times. So we started looking into other options. And we found one. We found one that was basically polymerase chain reactions PCR, and the results were given to us in 8 hours. So we were really happy. We have a really strong community of mayors and public officials, especially in our southern beaches, that really wanted and desired a faster turnaround time, because what we kept constantly hearing was that the surfers and the swimmers were picking up illnesses that our sample results were just not picking up. And then we also knew that about 50% of our advisories were one-day advisories. So we needed a better method. And in 2012, we started looking into this. So it took us 10 years to get it approved. The first one was in 2012, we started with this qPCR, quantitative PCR. In 2013, we did a small scale study. It didn't give us the results that we wanted, so we kind of started looking into other options. In 2014, Senate Bill 1395 was sent to the Assembly, and it basically outlined the process by which a local health officer could receive approval for our rapid testing method. And then from 2015 to 2017, CDPH gave funding to further study a new PCR method called digital droplet PCR. And then we started with a work group as to really pursue this. In 2017 to 2020, we did a large-scale comparative study of ddPCR between ddPCR and EnterAlert. We collected, and I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget, we collected about 1,993 samples during this study. And finally, in 2021, a journal article was published. EPA reviewed the data and they approved it. And then CDPH started looking at it and giving its initial state approval. In 2022, we had all the approvals. CDPH had approved it, and also our lab got the eLab approval to actually implement and take the ddPCR results for recreational water testing. So now we were ready to go, right? So the first thing we did was we contacted all our cities and our lifeguard groups and our state agencies. San Diego County has a lot of state beaches and a lot of state parks that have beach access. So we needed to coordinate between all of the agencies. We told them that sample results were going to be in 8 hours, which was wonderful, what everybody wanted. And there was potentially more risk of bacterial advisories because ddPCR is more accurate. It's giving us more sensitive data, more accurate data, and we were going to potentially have more bacterial advisories. And then, of course, we did the media release in the press conference outlining that this was happening. This one's my next method. The journal article was published in the Journal of Microbiological Methods, and basically it's telling me that the most probable method for Enterococcus is the DNA copy number times 0.06 plus 16.61. So one of the biggest things that I really needed to teach and to share with my stakeholders is we're not talking about 104 anymore. Everybody always had, what's my threshold? 104 colonies, 104 colonies. Well, guess what? My threshold is now 1,413 DNA copies. So everybody had to shift their mentality of 104 to 1,400. And that was one of the biggest things that I needed to explain. In May 5th, 2022, we went live. That was the day we chose to go live with ddPCR. The biggest impact that we've had in terms of just my program is staffing hours. We have really early starts. So when Diane from San Francisco was talking about the homeless problem and being assaulted, or I don't know what the word she used, but it really concerned me because we're at the beach at 5:30 in the morning. Like literally we have staff starting at 5:30 a.m. in the morning to be at the beach between 6 and 6:30, so they can drop off their sample at the lab between 8:30 and 9. 9:30. So it means that I have staff that's in the field really early, but then I also need staff that can stay here till 6 o'clock because my samples are coming in between 3 and 6 p.m. So that's kind of has been the biggest shift. I need to have staff that's super early and then staff that can stay till 6, because that's about between around 4:30ish. That's what I found. Around 4:30ish is when I'm getting my results. So if I need to take beach management actions, I'm starting at 4:30. Yeah, so that has been the biggest impact. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit because I think it's really important that we talk about this, because that really impacted all the consecutive actions after DDPCR went live. So and I want to talk about this one. So we've always talked about the Tijuana River, how the Tijuana River impacts beaches in San Diego County, and the South County beaches are really contaminated and all of this. And we've always mentioned it, but what I really want to say is, yes, it is the Tijuana River, but it's 2 discharge points of the Tijuana River. So I don't know, can you see my cursor? Okay, so let me see if I go up here. Can you see it from here? Yes, good, lovely. So if you see this is the infrastructure of the border region. Here is a reservoir that's in Tijuana. In Tijuana, there are 2 wastewater treatment plants, La Morita and Arturo Herrera, that treat their water, and I'm going to do quote marks because I'm really not sure how much level treatment is happening, and discharge directly into the river. In the summer, this water gets to about 300, 400 yards before the border, and it gets pumped to a pump station. It's called Pump Station Sila. And Pump Station Sila takes this water, pumps 25 million gallons of it a day to the International Wastewater Treatment Plant, and the other is pumped straight to another really big wastewater treatment plant that is about 6 miles south of the border. This really big wastewater treatment plant treats the water, okay? Again, I don't know how much, but treats the water and then discharges it directly into the ocean. And there is no outfall. It's literally a creek down into the beach line. So this is one source of contamination. In the summer, we have really strong southern swells, right? So all of these millions of gallons, which we're not really sure how much it is, flows north and impacts South County beaches. That is one source of contamination. Now, this is the summer source. In the winter source, this pump station cannot handle the volume of water coming down the river, because it's not just the water from the wastewater treatment plants, it's also urban runoff when we get rain, right? The river's doing its job. So this pump station gets shut off. There's no water going in because it just can't handle the volume. So the river flows directly into the US. This is my source of contamination in the winter. So just to reiterate, it's one source, two locations. The San Antonio de los Buenos plant, or we call it Punta Bandera because the location of the beach is called Punta Bandera. In the summer, it's Punta Bandera. In the winter is the Tijuana River. And again, we started DDPCR on May 5th when the summer swells are starting. So let's go to the next. So we go live, we get a lot of really good press. Everybody's really excited. The mayors of the South County beaches are really excited. Much faster testing, new water testing technology. Everybody's super excited. We're all super excited. And then guess what we get? We get a really strong southern swell. So that day I took samples, and by that afternoon, I'm closing Imperial Beach because the sample results were really high. I mean, in the Imperial Beach Pier, my sample results was 2,251. Carnation Avenue was my most northern location in Imperial Beach, was 1759. So by May 5th, I started closing beaches. By May 10th, Silver Strand and Coronado were closed. That was a problem that we expected, but we didn't realize how big it was going to be. And then it shifted. The narrative quickly switched with the focus shifting to questioning the new approved testing rather than focusing on the source of the contamination, which is the failing wastewater infrastructure in Mexico, in Tijuana. So now the same advocates that wanted this new methodology, the mayors, and started going, what are you doing? You're closing my beaches. I don't know how many of you know, but consistently, one of the top 10 beaches in the United States is Coronado. And now I'm closing the beach a lot. So those advocates that wanted this test are kind of going, what's going on? We were really affecting local businesses, tourism. There was a lot of economic impacts from the closures, and all of those factors were now being weighed in public domain by the media. And so now we were dealing with protecting public health and water quality conditions to also dealing with economic impacts and tourism impacts that we were not ready. We kind of didn't expect to go there fast enough. So this is just a chart of how many days the beaches in the southern part of San Diego County have been closed. As you can see, in 2020, Coronado was closed 0 days. In 2021, nothing. In 2022, it was closed 11 days. Silver Strand, 4/0/16. Imperial Beach, 14/0/25. And then TJ Slough, which are the beaches right next to where the TJ River outfalls, they haven't been open since pretty much December 8th of last year. I haven't opened it. I opened it a few weeks and then we had some rain and then I closed it back up again. So this impacted a lot of things. It impacted vacationers, of course, because people want to come to San Diego to use their beaches. It impacted children's camps. There's a really big YMCA surf camp in the north part of Imperial Beach. My kids learned to surf there. We had sporting events that were impacted. We were supposed to have junior lifeguards in Coronado. They had to cancel that. So we had a lot of things that now were going to be impacted. And we were hearing a lot of concerns from the community about these impacts of the beach closures. And we want our beaches to be open, and we want to use residents and visitors to enjoy them, but we also want the beaches to be safe. And we hold a duty to protect public health, but mainly to inform the public when there's a known sewage impact on the beach. And we talked about it today a lot, but we talked about the bacteria advisory, the bacteria summit. And on the second day of the bacteria summit, there was this lady from the city of Santa Barbara. And her name, and I wrote it down because I was going to forget. Her name was Jill Murray. And Jill Murray really impacted the way I look at my program. And she was talking about the value of blue space, the value of being in the ocean. And I worry a lot about the physical health, but I never really considered the mental health of being in the water, of surfing, of just sitting there and watching the waves break. And she really changed the way I looked at my program to say, okay, I want to keep you healthy, but mental health is important too. And the beach provides a lot of that. So if any of you know Jill Murray from the city of Santa Barbara, let her know that she made a difference in my life that day. Anyway, so we needed to do additional actions. This was not going to be okay. We were really impacting a lot of programs. So we DHQ came up with a tiered system approach. So this is our new tiered system. We have three beach management actions now in San Diego County. We have an advisory, we have a warning, and we have a beach closure. And the warning is really only for Southern County beaches. And basically an advisory is the typical advisory that we all know and love. You get sample results, they exceed, you issue a water contact advisory, you resample, and hopefully you can lift the advisory the next day. A warning is the next tier up. And that's basically your sample results have exceeded state standards. You have south swells. So all of that water from Punta Bandera is potentially coming north, but we're not sure how much because we really don't know how much water is actually coming out of that wastewater treatment plant. We have south swells. There's no odors of discoloration in the beach. You know, when sewage hits the beach, you get that weird fabuloso smell. I call it the fabuloso smell because it looks like smells like a cleaner, downy smell, but in Mexico, downy is fabuloso. That's the brand. So you have this fabuloso smell, so there's no odors, no discoloration. And we issue a warning and we start sampling daily all of the locations in the area that the warning is issued. So there's sample results exceed DD-PCR standards, south swells, but there's no odors or discolorations, and we sample daily. And then we still have the closure, right? A closure is when we have a known sewage impact or a chemical spill, which are not as common, but it can happen. We have Tijuana River flows, so we know sewage is reaching the United States, and we sample daily. Everything's sampled daily. Once we implemented this method, we kind of started giving the option of the people, of the population to decide, hey, I want to go into the beach or not. That kind of gave them a little bit. So we're able to provide to the public accurate and fast information about the swells and the water results, and without really needing to close the beaches. That was kind of our goal. So if you look at this table, this is all of the advisories and closures and warnings I have issued since July 1st, when this new tiered system went into effect. As you can see, closures, it's been 150 days. The Imperial Beach shoreline has been pretty much, no, the Tijuana River shoreline has been closed all of this time. We haven't opened it because it's consistently high every time we sample. Imperial Beach, it's been closed 52 days, but it's been warned in warning 71 days, advisory only 8 days. But it's only been open for 19 days since July 1st. Like no beach management action at all. It's only been 19 days since July 1st. Silver Strand, it's been open for 89 days. We've had 2 advisories. We have had 30 days of warnings, and then we've had 29 days of closures. And in Coronado, it's been open for 111 days, 8 days of advisories, 16 days of warnings, and 15 days of closures. So that's how we dealt with the implementation of DD-PCR in the South County. But you know, the South County has that constant source of contamination, which we don't have any other place in the county. So let's shift our focus from South County to now the northern beaches of San Diego County, and let's talk about how DD-PCR really impacted those beaches, because it's a completely different situation. Bacterial advisories, we're noticing that a lot more are basically still able to live within 24 hours. That hasn't changed a lot because we sample first thing in the morning. I get results, like I said, between 2 and 6 o'clock, between 3 and 6 o'clock. I take my beach management actions. The next day, the beach is resampled. We're finding that we are realizing that by having that shorter time frame, we're able to find issues and investigate a lot faster. I had a situation in Oceanside on Surfrider Way. That's one of our sample locations. It has a storm drain, and we monitor it weekly. And one day I got DDPCR results in the 16,000s, which I looked at it and I'm like, those are South County numbers. Those are not North County numbers. What's going on? And I was immediately able to call the lifeguards and say, is that storm drain flowing? And it was the middle of August. They called me back and they said, it's not flowing, but there's water in the storm drain. I'm like, there should be no water in the storm drain. It's August. So that afternoon, I was able to call the City of Oceanside stormwater program and say, something's going on in your storm drain. By the next day, they had found their illegal discharge and they had put a stop to it. So we're able to, because it's such a faster turnaround time, we're able to detect and investigate faster. And because it's so accurate and so sensitive, it kind of goes from really small numbers to huge numbers. And you know, okay, something's going on. This is not natural. This is not nature doing its job. Something's coming into that storm drain. Because the sample DDPCR is a lot more accurate, we are able now to really look at our beaches and say, okay, which ones are having water quality issues? Which ones are really, do we really need to focus on and keep sampling and really monitoring? Because, you know, we're just getting a lot higher numbers. The other thing that we're noticing is that in some locations, advisories can last a lot longer. Highlands Park is a really cute beach line in Coronado, but on the bay side. And crazily enough, there are boats that are parked there year round. So it made me think. But it was under advisory from July 7th to October 6th. And mainly because we would get an exceedance and then we'd have 2 or 3 weeks of it being okay. And then it would get another huge exceedance. So we would hit the geo mean and then it would be okay for a couple of weeks and then a huge exceedance again. So we were constantly hitting geo means. So what we're seeing is the beaches that have an outside sort of contamination, our advisories are just going to last longer because they're hitting the geo means. And so I gave you the numbers for South County. Now I'm going to give you the numbers for North County, non-South County, because I don't want to compare apples to oranges. Again, South County has a really strong constant source of contamination. In 2021, we had 27 advisories that lasted 1 day. In 2022, we had 25. So we're kind of the same. We haven't changed that much. Our 1 day advisories have stayed pretty much the same. In terms of advisories that lasted less than a week, we had 9 in 2021. We had 25 in 2022. So it seems to me that DDPCR is really affecting those week-long advisories. The advisories that lasted 1 to 2 weeks, we had 3 in 2021 and 2 in 2022. This is from the same time period. And then advisories that lasted not greater than 2 weeks, we had 9 in 2021 and 5 this year. So I think the one that is disproportionately is the one that is from less than 1 week. The advisories that are lasting less than 1 week, we seem to be higher in DDPCR with that. Another thing that we need to have a conversation on is geomean. And I just want to show you, because I think geomean has really impacted the way we do our program and DDPCR especially. This is Highlands Park, the site that I told you about that is in Coronado, but on the bay side. We don't do culture samples in any location in San Diego, like environmental health and quality does not do culture samples in any other location other than this one. And the only reason why we do it on this one is because we have an agreement with the Port of San Diego that we will do it for them. So DDPCR, the journal article in microbiology said that the conversion is DNA copy number times 0.066183 plus 16.61. So if I get my ddPCR analytical result, this is it, right? Oh, sorry, I clicked. If I do the result for culture, like I actually do enter alert, these are my results. But if I do the conversion, my results are these. So if you notice, how am I going to go from 10 to 91? Calculate the geo-mean now based potential, and this is for other locations in San Diego County. Tidelands, I can go on to 10 if I want to, I guess. I don't. But how now I'm calculating geo-mean based on a number that's 91, when my geo-mean for entero is 35. Am I making sense? So my numbers, my conversion numbers, which is what I base my geo-mean calculations, are so much higher because my results are so much higher. So my geo-mean is constantly being high. So my numbers are I'm constantly hitting a geo-mean for a lot of other locations in San Diego County. That's kind of been the biggest issue that we've had. And just to narrow it down, what are our next steps? It's been 6 months. We started, like I said, on May 5th. It's been 6 months. We need to learn a lot. We need to, every couple of weeks, I call my boss, Heather, and say, we never thought about this. Let's talk about this now. Hey, this just came up. So we're evaluating the program a lot. Geo-mean calculation, my threshold, it needs to be addressed because I'm constantly hitting geo-means because my results are just higher. But like I said, not to be a Debbie Downer, it's giving me numbers that are really giving me an idea of the health of those beaches. And it's really giving me numbers so fast that I can inform the public by that afternoon, hey, something's going on, you might not want to be in that beach. If your agency is really considering implementing ddPCR or looking into it, we do have a monthly ddPCR meeting, and environmental health and quality is there, CDPH is there, UCSD, EPA Region 9 is present, our public health lab is present, and we just kind of talk about what's going on, what we're finding, and the challenges that we're facing, because it's brand new. We're the only agency in the United States that's using ddPCR. So we're kind of learning to walk as we're doing it. And it's been fun. I won't say that it wasn't, but it's been a challenge too. This is my son. I want to finish with a picture of my son. This is my son, Jonathan. Yes, he is 13 years old and he is a surfer. So when I say it's my happy place, it's because I'm at the beach a lot for my job and to take my son to the beach to go surfing. If you have any questions, please, here's my contact info. Reach out. I'd be happy to share anything that you want about what we're learning, how we're developing the program. If for whatever reason I'm not in the office, the Beach and Bay generic email is there and somebody will be checking it every day. So you will always be able to get a hold of somebody. And with that, I'm going to open it to Q&A. Okay.
And Romina, we have a question in the chat from Darcy. So Darcy, the short answer is no. Really, we're not seeing significant changes in our North County. Really, the biggest impact is that we're able to have our beach management actions the same day that we're taking the samples. We're finding it's faster in some situations to reopen because we're getting samples back faster. But because they're more accurate, you know, if the numbers are still high, it is taking a little bit longer to clear that beach to reopen. And I think, Luke, I think your hand popped up next.
Hi, yeah, thank you for that presentation. We've been very supportive of like qPCR or PCR methods for years. So it's great to see it being rolled out. I'm sorry you've gotten pushback from some folks in the environmental community, but we're definitely supportive of this. We think it's a good thing. I did have a few questions. Could you just clarify that most exceedances were due to geometric mean exceedances? Is that what I gathered?
Well, the ones that tend to be that go longer are because of the geometric means. So for example, tidelands, it's because I could never get it out of geomean.
Okay, so that's for tidelands. Okay.
So if it's a longer advisory, it's probably because I hit the geomean and there was just nothing I could do.
Okay, got it. And then
Romina, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not utilizing geomean at locations where we sample every single day. Is that correct?
That is correct. If for the South County beaches, if there's certain locations in South County that I sample daily, there's 4 locations in Imperial Beach, 1 location in Silver Strand, and 1 location in Coronado. For those, we're not doing geomean because the sample would get so diluted that it just wouldn't make sense. And we're going way above and beyond the regulatory requirement. We're sampling daily.
okay.
So we would know.
Okay, great. And then sorry, one last thing, if you could clarify a little bit about the advisory tier system. So the warning versus the closure, the warning is when you know there is a swell. That's the only circumstance where you'd have a warning besides an advisory. An advisory is an exceedance without a swell. A warning is an exceedance with a south swell. Closures with the known sewage.
Yes, and to clarify, the warning is, a local tier because the conditions in San Diego are unique to San Diego. They're not conditions that you see anywhere else in the state. And so we developed that warning tier in consultation with CDPH and US EPA, making sure we could do something local to address our local conditions. And so really that warning tier is just what you said, when we have the bacterial exceedance, plus we have the south swell condition. So we know that the sewage is coming our way, right? But it maybe has not quite hit the beach yet. So we needed something additional to give the public notification of the conditions, existing or coming our way, give them that public health notice, while also balancing all of the other impacts to potentially closing a beach. So that's why that warning tier came into fruition locally.
Okay, thank you.
Diane?
Yeah, sorry, slow fingers here. So 2-part question, but you might answer it in the first part. When you're saying beach management action, does that include physically posting the beaches or the sites that are? And if you do so, what time of day? Do you do it at 6 p.m. late at night, or do you wait for first thing in the morning?
It depends on the beach. We have really good relationships with the lifeguard agencies in San Diego. So 90% of my signs are posted by the actual lifeguards. So if they're still in the summer, which is where the beaches are used till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, they're there till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. So as long as I notify them, they post the beach. So it's mainly 90% of it is done by the lifeguards. There's certain beaches that are not, and I've found myself at 7 o'clock at night sometimes driving to a beach to put a sign there. But it doesn't happen very often.
Okay, thanks. Oh, and just to clarify, you have a right to be concerned, I think, about any time of day, because my incident happened at 11 a.m. in the morning. So
yeah,
it was midday. So thank you.
I think the last question is John.
Yeah, so great presentation. I just want to follow up with what Darcy kind of mentioned about the seemingly systematically higher number for DDPCR compared to the culture number. You didn't do the all of the sites for parallel comparison, but for the sites that you did show seems to be biased high. I guess you probably will do more data analysis and see if there is a live versus dead bias. But I understand that coming up with the adoption of the method, there has to be plenty of data to support this formula. But just from the data you showed, there seems to be a bias. So
I want to clarify that the data that was showed was just specifically for that one location. So we've done years and years of comparative data, and all of that was published in the research paper that was done to lead us to the approval. And so all of that data is available. We are no longer collecting side-by-side data because we've already reached the approval process. As part of our working group with EPA and CDPH, we discuss this all the time. Is there a need to relook at data? When we implemented and we had that really strong south swell condition, we actually took an additional month of side-by-side in south swell conditions just to see, is there a difference this versus when we look at the whole county. We compared that data to the years of data that we had from the studies that were conducted, right, to analyze that. And actually, we're still doing a little bit more analysis on that. But so all of that data is there and exists. What Romina was showing was just one specific site, but in general, we're at the point where we no longer need to collect that data for San Diego County. It's been done.
Thank you.
Okay. Was there anything, let's see, in the chat that we didn't get to? I could take the one that said, oh, I may have missed. Are you measuring culture-based entero for CFU numbers that you presented alongside DDPCR? So I'll start, Romina, and then you jump in. But we're at the point now where we're not going to be collecting any culture samples. That one site is kind of a one-off, but we fully have implemented only DDPCR for environmental health sample collection. And so that is the way that we're moving forward, and no more culture samples. Romina, did you want to add on to that?
No, just only that the only location in San Diego County that we do culture samples is Tidelands because of the agreement with the port. Everything else is just straight DDPCR.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Romina. This is Hope. I asked the question. I was thinking along the same thing that John had brought up about it. Seems like you're hitting the statewide bacteria provisions numbers for the CFU for the geomean, but your DDPCR results are so much higher. So I would have the same, I guess, questions around where that difference comes from, dead cells or what else. And but yeah, thanks for answering that. I'll look at at your publications.
And we can send out in follow-up. We can share back with Michelle or Kat to send to the group all of the research documents and papers that went into the approval process for DDPCR, if that would be helpful to this team, if they don't already have them yet. Okay. So with the daily sampling, has this had a significant impact on your budget for staff, time, and lab costs? In short, yes. So we did add an additional position because we found that we need to have more people out in the field in the morning to collect the samples and be back to the lab. We are doing this daily, and really, I think for San Diego, the answer is yes. If this were to be implemented elsewhere, I don't think the answer would be yes, because we're sampling daily and we have such unique conditions down here. That's one of the reasons, we implemented it. That and the volume of mileage, the 70 miles of coastline, is a challenge if we have someplace all the way up at the top of our county, as well as the bottom. The lab costs have gone up, I would say they're still working on it, and they're doing a new cost study, but it's a difference of about, I think, $25 to $30 per sample, which adds up. So yes, there has been some fiscal impacts. And then, let's see, yes, we'll share out the presentation. So in relation to recycled water discharge, does the DDPCR method get affected? Romina, do you want to take that one? I don't know that we've specifically measured anything directly at a recycled water outfall or output.
I don't think we have. So I don't know. But again, if there's any recycled water outfalls that are not in the South Bay, I just know one recycled water treatment plant, which is in the South Bay, in the South County. We're not seeing as many advisories up north. So off my gut, I'm going to say no, just because we're just not seeing those numbers higher other than in the South County.
But we've not specifically looked at that.
But we haven't looked at it at all.
Did I miss any questions in the chat? If I did, I'm sorry, and shout them out.
I think that's it. And like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Overall, it's been good. It's really giving us an idea of what the health of the beaches are. And especially in the South County, it's really giving us, which is why we started this DDPCR, is really giving us an idea of how healthy, or in this case, unhealthy, the beach line actually is.
Thank you so much, Romina, for presenting that information, and for Heather for answering questions. I really appreciated the visual of what's going on with the Tijuana River. That was really helpful. So yeah, thank you. If there are no other questions, we can go ahead and wrap up the meeting for today. Thank you so much to all the presenters. It was such good information. I will follow up with presentations, yeah, and also feel free to reach out to me via email if you have any questions, or if you don't receive the presentation from me, let me know. And our next work group meeting will be around May of next year, and we'll send out a notification beforehand. And as we mentioned, Eric Dubinsky will talk about the Justice 40 program at that time. So yeah, thank you all so much for being here today. And yeah, I appreciate it. So enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Information today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.